Welcome to the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast with your hosts, Matt High, Richie Kopech, and Joe Capozzi. Welcome to the lair. And welcome into another episode of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. I'm your host, Matt High, joined by Joe and Rich. We are here to talk about one of my favorite topics every year, breakouts. How we doing tonight, gentlemen?
I'm good. I was waiting for Joe to go first here. My apologies. Yeah, no, I'm doing well, man. Can't complain. It's definitely a very hot week this week, plus a lot of rain. So July's not exactly the best time, I'd say. I've had definitely better Julys, but overall, it's all right. You know, just kind of living. We're getting closer. 50 days to football, I believe, right, boys?
Something like that, yeah. And to that,
Yeah.
I say, we are ready.
That was so loud.
That was good.
Go for it.
We needed that.
Yes, sir. But how you doing, Joe?
I'm good. I've been doing some underdog drafts. I know I told both of you I was in an underdog draft today. It was the puppy ball, whatever, where I think it's 12 team, 18 picks, and the guy went 4 quarterbacks. And I'm not saying the top 4 quarterbacks. He took Lamar before Patrick Mahomes, and then he went Fields, and then he went Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson. So, okay.
It's a bold strategy. We'll see if
Yeah,
it pays off for
whatever.
him.
I was happy with it because that let me get the players I wanted. So
Nice. All right, so we got our quick question today. This is a fun one. What player has the widest range of outcomes for the upcoming 2023 season? Joe, why don't you give yours? Because I really like yours.
I picked Drake London because who knows what Drake London's going to do. We all know that Drake London. None of us are doubting Drake London's athletic capabilities, but he's also on the Atlanta Falcons. No one doubted Kyle Pitts' athletic abilities coming out of the draft. Has Kyle Pitts been a top 5 quarterback or tight end every year? He has not. Will Drake London be a top 5 wide receiver? Who knows? It's a revolving door of quarterbacks over there. Now we have Bijan, so we're going to be running the ball a lot. So are we going to throw it to Drake London? Maybe. I don't know. I could see him being a top 20, top 30 wide receiver if he gets the ball. I could also see him being in the bottom of the barrel if they're running with Bijan all the time. He's just a giant question mark. He could be good. He could be bad. I mean, he technically is the wide receiver one there, but does that mean a lot? Not really. So who knows? And that is my variety player choice.
Yeah, I like it. He's so weird to kind of stat out just because that offense runs the ball so much. I mean, last year they just kept running the ball. He had like a 30% target share, which if you look at the guys that have close to a 30% target share, they're usually finished top 5 in fantasy points at the wide receiver position. So you're talking Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, like all these guys that just demand a ton of targets. And here's Drake London, who has the target share. It's just you're splitting up a small pizza, so it's kind of difficult.
Still hungry.
Yes, yeah. You know, most of a little bit is still a little bit. So
It's true.
who you got there, Rich?
So for me, it's it's Gabe Davis, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And I kind of have this love-hate relationship right now going on with Gabe Davis. I do have many shares of him, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I've got to watch the man grow. He is pretty much, to me, the second option or second weapon there for Josh Allen and that high-powered offense. So, you know, I mean, it's kind of a give and take. You know, it's I know he's got the size, he's got the ability. The Bills Mafia seems to love him. So, you know, I can see why, or I can see a path that leads him to continue on and ultimately just, you know, be the receiver that I think I expected him to be. Um, But I mean, I guess it's a bit of the last season being a bitter taste in your mouth because I think we expected that last season. So overall, I mean, the widest range of outcomes for me is just that Gabe Davis could ultimately fall beneath one of these rookie receivers that are coming in. Somebody else could take that spot over him. It seems like it's not very much a locked in spot for him. So it's tough to say. But on the other hand, having faith in Davis, I can see the world where he's just overall better than these other receivers that they did bring in. And maybe he does actually take a step forward and become the true wide receiver two on that team.
He's, I think, for me, is like the definition of post type sleeper because he could knock, blow the doors off this year, um, based on his ADP. Like he can very easily outperform his ADP, but he can also just, like you said, kind of just disappear again like last year. Which I feel like last year we're all thinking that one week where he scored 4 touchdowns, we figured, oh, this is the beginning of something great. And I feel like that was just taken a little bit out of context, where you know, his target share wasn't that great. He was more of a high yardage guy, like a boom bust type player. Just happened to be on a really good offense and scoring a lot of touchdowns. I think that's kind of where more of it is, and that's why, going into this year, we're going to talk about a guy that I'm a little lower on than you. So, a kind of similar situation in my mind. So when we get to that, we'll have a little chat about it. But rolling right in, Cam Akers for me. He could be a perfect running back that you draft a little bit later than some of these other guys that could just completely run away with it, or he could just fizzle out to nothing. I think all of us right now kind of agree the Rams probably going to be closer to the bottom of the barrel as far as the NFL team this year. A lot of question marks outside of Cooper Cup, and that's kind of it. He's probably the safest person on that team. And last year was just so weird. He went from playing second fiddle to Darrell Henderson, who's now no longer on a team, and then he was away from the team, wanted to be traded, wasn't, then came back and took over the job again. So who knows what he's going to do? But I don't think anyone on that roster currently can compete with him. So he's going to get the lion's share of that workload. So volume is king. Everyone says it. That's kind of where I'm leaning with this one. But he could very easily just go into and turn into dust. Like Thanos snap, gone. That's it. So, what do you guys think of Cam Akers this year?
We all thought Cam Akers last year was gonna be something, and then like you said, with all the ups and downs, and I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Rams to pick up one of these free agent running backs. I could see Cook coming in the door, see who's the other one that's just a free agent,
Zeke, Fournette,
Zeke or Fournette or any of those. I could see them easily signing them to like a 1 year deal to bring them in. Cam Akers, of course, Cam Akers was the backup to Henderson, who also, in my opinion, was very mediocre. And I think Cam Akers was better than Henderson, so that was very surprising. And like you said, I could see him being a top viable running back option that you can grab late. But you could also see him being replaced very early with one of these free agents. So who knows? I like that pick.
All right, so why don't we dive right in? We're going to go over a couple breakouts that we're projecting this season. Starting us off, Mr. Capozzi, why don't you get us started?
So my first breakout, and this is probably one of the safer ones, is Garrett Wilson. He's being drafted pretty early in drafts, so it's not really a surprise to see him being a breakout. I mean, he's going from a quarterback upgrade from Mr. Zach Wilson over to the pro himself, Aaron Rodgers. We've seen that he can slug the ball and make players even he can make even Christian Watson look good. So um, Aaron Rodgers knows what he's doing. He's been around. He's a passer. We know he can get that deep ball out. Garrett Wilson's very athletic. He can get open, and I see them just unleashing Garrett Wilson this year with Rodgers at the helm and adding in. You have the run threat with Brees Hall, so defenses are always going to be guessing. And I just see Garrett Wilson having just building on that rookie season and just having a monster sophomore year with Rodgers at the helm and could be his breakout year.
Really, really like Garrett Wilson this year. How do you feel about him, Rich?
I've been up and down on this Jets train right now. I'll tell you, and I think right now where I lean is the Jets having a mediocre season. I think it's too overhyped. Look, I mean Garrett Wilson, I love the player. I was very much in on him last season. I think you remember Matt. I think there was a couple weeks in a row where I was telling you to start him, and so I mean, guy is an absolute athlete. You cannot take that away from him overall. But what I will say is that there's a lot expected from this Jets offense this season, or this Jets team, I should say, in general. So with the pressure of it all, I mean, he is a just a second year player. I mean, I don't know. I think for the long run, I was in on it, but I'm starting to back off. I'm starting to back off a little bit, and so I mean, I think I'm starting to turn the other leaf, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna ride with you, Joe, but overall, I don't know. I think I'm just a little off the heat on him.
Yeah, last year there was like a 4 to 5 week stretch where he was your hero wide receiver pretty much every week.
Yeah,
Um,
I think like 3 weeks in a row or something like that.
it was something crazy. It was you were just like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna go back. It worked last time. It's gonna work again this week, and sure enough,
and it
it
did
did.
from 10 to
Yeah,
13. Guy was a stud,
yeah,
or no?
S- something like that.
I
Yeah,
think he was a stud for more than that. But anyway,
yeah. For me, I think Garrett Wilson. It doesn't really matter what the Jets around him do. I think he is talented enough, and Aaron Rodgers has a tendency to lock on to a single target and just hammer the ball at him. So I do think that Garrett Wilson will be that guy. I don't think there's anyone on that team that's really going to compete for top dog in that offense. And the Jets by themselves kind of. Do you guys remember a couple years ago? I think it was 2018 or 2019 when the Browns were getting all this hype. They're going to the Super Bowl. This is their year, and they just kind of fizzled out. That's kind
the
of
year when they had Beckham and
and
Landry
Landry.
together.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
like, oh my God,
yeah,
this look at this team. It's great, and it just didn't happen. So, not saying that's where I lean, but I feel like I'm a little bit closer to that versus where some people are saying Aaron Rodgers is going to come in, but they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year. I don't think that's happening. I think there's too much going on, but Garrett Wilson by himself, I mean, just look at those stats last year, and I do think that Aaron Rodgers is going to basically give him the ball any chance he can. He's come out and said Garrett Wilson's the best one on the team, his favorite target. So the sky's the limit for this kid, and I'm very excited to draft him this year.
yeah. No, I'm with you. But last little note there: Jets opening schedule or Jets schedule in general is not tough, or it's very tough, I should say. I'm sorry. Where they open up with the Bills, then the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Eagles. Before they get to teams like the Giants. And then they come back around. Well, the Giants are no slouch either, and then you have the Chargers right after that. I mean, the opening couple games there is just kind of brutal. So
Yeah,
I just want to
basically.
it's
clarify. I just want to clarify. I'm not saying the Jets are making the Super Bowl. I'm just
Oh
saying
no.
Garrett Wilson himself is going to have a killer season.
Yeah,
we know that.
yeah,
We're just talking off that. That's
yeah.
all.
I think it's just going to be fun to watch this team go. And basically, Rich, what you just kind of mentioned, to me, what I heard was buy him after week 7 or 8 when people are a little bit down on him. Trade for him then because his stock
Oh, even
might be a
before
little
that,
lower. Yeah,
I would try
so
to get it
we'll
before
see.
that. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
all right. So you're up, sir.
Yes,
Who you
sir.
got?
Moving on. Well, my guy, I think it's a little more chalky, but I like it, and it's Trevor Lawrence from the Jags. Trevor, to me, I think we're about to see some good play this season. I think this is where he takes that step forward. I mean, we've seen it kind of already happening, but just to kind of touch on the notes, I mean, starting really with just the coaching staff. You got, Urban Meyer, the experiment there obviously was a waste. But leading into that, I mean, Doug Peterson has been a pretty much a solid, addition. Has led him in the right direction. I think they're making smart moves. They're being smart with him, and overall, I love the addition of Doug Peterson to the team. And so with that, I mean, they acquired players like Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Engram in March, early at last season, just to help the development of Trevor Lawrence. And it's the result of it. It's last season, or the 2021 season, 12.7 fantasy points per game, bumped up to 17.9 fantasy points per game in 2022. So you love to see that, and I think we take another step forward. But in this case, I really do think we take a big step forward in year three. The addition of one Calvin Ridley, I think, is really going to be the factor here that's going to be huge for Trevor's development. I mean, understandably, the man has not played a game of football since October of 2021. I do get that. But Calvin Ridley, I think, is a different caliber wide receiver. And not to mention, there has just been the talk from the camp, from the beat writers, saying that Ridley in the offseason programs is standing out. He's being phenomenal. We heard Trevor Lawrence talk, I think, today about Calvin Ridley, saying how he's just a different type of athlete. So the hype around Calvin Ridley is real. I think he really kind of adds to this team. I think Evan Engram is a refreshed, renewed version of himself. So it's great to see there. Not to mention, I mean, Trevor Lawrence is the eighth most rushing yards among quarterbacks over the last 2 years. So the boy's got some legs on him. Overall, I think we see what we think is going to be a back of the QB ones. I think he takes that step up and he gets us right to that QB5 spot.
Yeah, I love Trevor Lawrence this year. I'm very very excited. I mean, this team. One of the reasons that everyone is very high on Justin Fields is because they got him an alpha wide receiver. Now they already had Christian Kirk. They had Evan Engram. They have ETN who can catch the ball in the backfield, even though he's been a little bit iffy so far in his career in the NFL. But now you bring in Calvin friggin' Ridley, and I understand, you mentioned it. He hasn't played since October 2021, but I feel like he's going to start a little bit slower, but he's getting this full off season to work with the team, and just the news has been glowing about this team so far. So I'm actively trying to acquire Trevor Lawrence in any league I can, and I'm going to be drafting him pretty heavily if I get the chance in redraft this year. I know you are a very high Trevor Lawrence person, Joe.
Yeah, I feel like this was I agree with Richie. I mean, he's the top 10 quarterback for a reason already, but definitely with the addition of Calvin Ridley and just what he's shown us last year, I mean, he's due for a breakout season. I could see him being in top 5 easily. So,
Yeah, I think the ceiling is top five.
Yeah, it depends on how much he rushes. He hasn't done a ton of rushing, but I know he can. So it kind of
Yeah.
depends on. I have a feeling you could see close to 35 touchdowns from him with a little bit of rushing, and I think that's all he needs to hit that top mark. Be a top five quarterback, fantasy quarterback this season. So I do think of all the quarterbacks that are going to be going around that range, I would put his chances a little bit higher than some of the others. So, but all right, so now we're going to go on to my guy. And this is a guy that is quickly becoming one of my favorite wide receivers in the league, and that is Chris Olave. Last year in our Dynasty League, I traded up. Basically, I had no picks last year, and I traded the world away just to get into the spot where I could draft this person, and I've been very very happy with what I've seen. He was a wide receiver 25 in 2022, 14 games played. He missed a couple with injury, but everyone kind of does now. Last season, he had 114 targets, 72 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So Those are numbers that I think can go up. I do think, even though Mike Thomas is there, he is someone else who's been constantly injured. You can't really give him a set target share just because you don't know when he's going to be available. And Chris Olave made a bunch of big splash plays, and last year his quarterback was Andy Dalton. So if he could do it with Dalton, I do think that the addition of Derek Carr is in fact an upgrade. Look what he did with Devontae Adams last year. Uh, the only guy in town, and was still able to put up some serious numbers. So one thing I wanted to point out too was the target per route run. Now that targets are an earned stat with wide receivers, and his was a 26.45% target share. So ran a bunch of routes and got targeted on a ton of those. So that 26% is tied for 14 at the 14th highest rate since 2020. So the names ahead of him: Devontae Adams 3 times, Tyreek Hill twice, Cooper Kupp twice, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Deontay Johnson. Those are some pretty good names. It's actually
Solid list.
higher. Yeah, it's actually higher than Justin Jefferson.
Is Tim
And
Patrick on there?
no, not yet. He could be
Oh,
though. He could be. It's still early. But no, I mean, this is just he's primed for a breakout this season. If he just increases a little bit, he's easily in. He could easily be a top 15 wide receiver. Top five might be a little bit of a stretch, but it depends on some of the guys at the top currently if they fall out a little bit. Usually there is a slight dropout from year to year in these top 10 wide receivers, top 12 or so. And I do think Olave has the skill set and the situation around him to enter that area and be a true breakout in 2023. What do you guys think?
100% agree with you on that. I mean, Olave, I think right like out the gate as a freshman last season, I faded him, and I think it was more or less the QBs that were there. I wasn't very much interested. I didn't think there was going to be much from it. So, but he shined with mediocre quarterback play, and I think that's kind of the outlier there. I mean, the guy was amazing as far as on the deep throw, catching that, and getting into the end zone. It was beautiful to see multiple times. And I mean, there is the sticky stat there of Derek Carr just being a player who throws down the field, has that deep ball, and I think that's a beautiful connection there. Olave seems to be a player that can more often not come down with that balls with huge numbers in the middle of that. That's huge for your fantasy team. So definitely, I'm gonna ride with you on this one. I love Olave. I would love to get him more than I can. I just feel like every spot I'm sitting at, he always gets taken right before I can get him. So it's tough, but I'm with you. Love Olave.
Yeah, you got to draft him early. I think he's one of those guys where people like me are taking the shot, and I'd rather be wrong and have him than be right and have him sitting on someone else's team. So, all right, Joe, who is up next for you?
just on Olave. It's a sore subject because I could have had Olave in our 2022 draft, but granted, I love Brees Hall and I'm very happy I still have him. But I did take Burks before Olave. Not and don't get me wrong, I'm not out on Burks yet, but Olave just seems like a safer pick right now. So sore
Yet to be
subject.
seen, though.
You have to be seen. He showed glimpses of it, so and I did hear reports that he's been at the facility working all off season and he's going to be in ready to go shape this year. So we'll see. Um, but on my next guy that I think is going to have a breakout season, if you want to bring up the graphic, and it's to no surprise, this one's little easier, well, a little bit further down the list than Garrett Wilson, but it's going to be Alexander Madison. I mean, it's kind of almost like a no-brainer. He's shown us what he can do as a running back. With Cook out the door, the backfield is his, and he can show us even more of what he can do. I mean, if you look at his numbers with when Dalvin Cook was not playing and Madison did get the start, they were phenomenal. So I could see him just capitalizing on this season. getting all that goal line work that with Justin Jefferson and Addison getting the ball down the field, and then Madison just doing the 1-2 punch, running it right in. I could see him having a career high season, especially with this being his main shot at taking over that backfield.
Yeah, Madison's been what top 10 in those 6 games. One thing that I know gets thrown out a lot in regards to Madison and Dalvin Cook's splits is those 6 games that he has without Dalvin Cook playing were against some really, really poor defenses. I think it was Seattle twice, uh, the Lions twice, the Lions 3 times, and the Rams. So not great, but still, the opportunity is on 100% there for him to break out this year. And being the only guy in that backfield that can probably take over, I don't think anyone is going to say, one of the other guys can be better than him and take over. I think he's primed and set for this year. So I love Alexander Madison this year. And right now he's ranked as the RB 22. So for someone who's
Criminal.
finished top 10, like I feel like he even if he's a top 15 back, he's still great. And you're getting him at a discount just because we haven't seen him play a full season without Dalvin Cook. Because let's face it, Dalvin Cook is good at football, despite what's going on in the market right now. So, what do you think, Rich? Alexander Madison.
Well, you guys really touched on all the notes I was going to say. I mean, I'm also very much in on Alexander Madison. Obviously, I love the Vikings, and so Dalvin Cook was a very, very big player for me. So I had Alexander Madison pretty much since he came out, and I've always been pretty high on him. But no, this season, especially right now in the situation, I think it's great for him overall. So, I mean, there's really not much more to say. You guys really did fine on it. I think Alexander Madison's a smash play. Ultimately, there's a lot of in this season. I do see a lot of this zero RB being very popular this season. So he is somebody to look at when you're in those later rounds to pick up. He's a great one to fall back on if you're going to go strong heavy at wide receiver in the open. So, or in the first couple rounds, I should say. So definitely like Alexander Madison for sure. So, but leading into that, I'll chime off that, get on to my guy here for my second breakout. And that's going to be Christian Watson from the Green Bay Packers, the wide receiver. So coming out of last season, similar to like kind of what I said on Olave, I don't know what it was, but I was just not really into the receivers for some reason much of last year. There was a couple that, I was paying attention to, but nothing really struck me as gold right off the bat. So that being said, I mean, looking at Christian Watson and everything, it's great to see a player of his size, 6'4", 208 pounds, run as fast as he does. I mean, he has a sub 4.4 speed, so great athletic body there. But slow start to the season. I don't know really what we can account that to. Aaron Rodgers was there at the time, but from week 10 on, producing top 10 wide receiver numbers. He was phenomenal at the end, all the way through to the playoffs. And then at that point, we're looking at this season now, and that's the variable. Is just that Aaron Rodgers is no longer there. We do have Jordan Love now stepping into the picture, and with that, I mean, is variable. We don't really know how we feel. Maybe confident. I think a little more confident. The players seem to have come out and say they support him and everything. So it's going to be interesting. But overall, through it all, I think we're looking at Watson as the wide receiver one there. The competition of Romeo Dobbs and other rookies don't scare me. I think the volume is going to get thrown his way, and that's really what it is. Wide receiver 3 with potential for more. So.
All right, Joe. I know you and me kind of feel the same way, so why don't you go at him first?
I could just be biased from having Aaron Rodgers on my team in the Guillotine League and watching Christian Watson drop a perfectly placed pass right into his hands, and he just dropped it. And ever since then, I'm like, screw this
Oh,
guy.
come on. Give the
I don't
rookie a
screw
break.
this guy. I don't want him on my team. I don't
Give
want him.
the rookie a break.
Ever since that moment, I've been completely off on him. Granted, he showed some good stuff towards the end of last season,
Look,
but
hold on, real quick. In that play, he destroyed Patrick Peterson in coverage. Destroyed
oh,
Patrick
oh,
Peterson in coverage
oh yeah, he did. He ran so fast and he got very open and got thrown a perfect pass, which he then
in due
proceeded to
time.
drop.
In due
He dropped
time.
it. It doesn't matter how
This
you.
season,
He dropped the pass.
he
We
knows he
don't
did
But
hold
too. He won't
grudges
do it
here
this
on
year.
the podcast.
He's got drop. He has some drops. Yeah, I think he had like 4 or 5 drops throughout the rest of the season there. But I'm just saying that
that was a
like
big one. That was a real big one, and it was
that
the
was a
first
big
one
one.
that I saw him get targeted with. And
I'm pretty sure that was
Christian,
his first play like in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, bad start. But
Excellent analysis.
he looked good towards the end of last season. My problem with you picking him for the breakout season this year is, like you said, Aaron Rodgers is gone, and now we have Jordan Love. Have we seen enough from Jordan Love to know that he could replicate the same amount of success in Green Bay? I don't think so. So I could be wrong, and Jordan Love could be uh, a phenomenal player and just go out there start slinging it, and Christian Watson could have the breakout season you're projecting, or he could look like a pile of garbage and not get Watson the ball, and when he does, who knows, Watson might drop it again. So you never know. I'm low on Watson. Maybe I'm just a hater. um, I'm very high.
100% a hater.
I'm not a Green Bay hater because I am very high on Aaron Jones this season, but with the unknowns on Jordan Love,
Oh, we know.
I'm staying away from him. So
Yeah,
Matt,
my thing with him, you kind of touched on it when we were talking about Gabe Davis at the top of the show, and I mentioned it there that we are going to talk about someone, and this is it. It's his target share. We all, I think understand that he's probably the wide receiver one there. I don't think that's really a question. It's just how much is this team going to throw now that Aaron Rodgers is not there? And I know a lot of this is basically Aaron Rodgers isn't there. This is new. I don't know what to do. But it's kind of another thing too where Gabe Davis didn't have a ton of targets, and we were drafting him like he was someone that did because he scored a lot of touchdowns or made these big splash plays. And I do think that bias is kind of creeping into Christian Watson. And don't get me wrong, he's a freak athlete. He is super fast, tall, big body wide receiver. He's set up to succeed. But I do think this team is going through a change. Has to. Aaron Rodgers is not there. Jordan Love, somewhat unproven. We've seen him a couple games. He's done decent, but I don't think one of us are expecting great things from this offense. So with this, it's more you're taking a shot at a wide receiver who made some really big splash plays. Took some. I mean, he's a guy that could take the ball to the house on any given play. We saw it last year. Multiple breakaway touchdown runs, and that's just not where I want to lay my bet. Is on a player that needs those plays to finish where he did. I mean, he finished as the wide receiver 36 last year. Nothing crazy. I mean, he missed a couple games. Yes, I understand. Everyone is going to talk about his stretch run where he was just, I think it was a top 10 wide receiver. But a lot of that was because of those large chunk plays that turned into touchdowns. I don't know if it's smart in fantasy to put your bet on something like that to repeat itself. It can. 100% can happen. I would just rather take some of the other guys over him and more solid players that I know are going to some get some targets here. And we got a fun little background. There he is dropping the ball. Oh man, we don't hold grudges on the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast, but hey, there he is. So I think that's enough about Christian Watson before we
I
bury the
can't
man.
wait for Christian Watson to be a top 32 wide receiver this season.
That's a bold take. Bold take. 32. Oh man, who
32,
knows?
top 32.
he's got to beat Tim Patrick for that spot.
Oh boy.
He might. He might. Give a lot of hate for Tim Patrick. He's my
I'm,
dude.
I
I
just
know.
love that you're. I just love that you're the Tim Patrick truther.
I
Just
love it
wait.
too. It's great.
Just wait. Just wait for it to
All right.
happen.
I'm waiting.
All right, Tim, who you got? Who's your last
All
guy
right,
here?
we're gonna have some fun with this one. We're gonna go on the Chig train. Chig Okonkwo, Tennessee Titans tight end. Last year, he wasn't really. He had another stretch run. I know I just talked about having a stretch run with Christian Watson being a bad thing, but in tight end, I feel like it's a little bit different. You're looking for a guy that gets targeted a ton in his offense and has a chance for touchdowns. And I mean, Chig is basically that. Finished as a tight end 25 in 2022, 45 targets, 32 receptions for 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. But looking at his snap shares before the week 6 bye last year, he was a 20% snap tight end. But starting week 7, he averaged about 43. Some weeks spiked at 60, some were a little bit lower. But that offense was also pretty terrible last year with all the injuries they had. So it's going to look different this year. They just signed DeAndre Hopkins, and I know most people will say that is a negative thing for Chig, but I kind of think it opens up the offense a little bit more. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get his. He's too talented still, even though he's a little bit older at the wide receiver position. He's going to demand targets. He's going to get those targets. I don't see. I know Traylon Burks is a popular guy that people are thinking that is going to take the step forward in year 2, but at tight end, I'm looking for a player that has the stature that Chico Conquo has. He's got 8 red zone targets last year, which isn't great, but he could be one of these guys that gets targeted heavily in the end zone this year. And this is one of my favorite stats. So in 2022, he had a 26% target per route run, which I already talked about with Chris Olave as being pretty high. I mean, he had over 26%. Now, you're talking about a tight end that has that too. Now, let's look at the guys ahead of him. It's just one, Kyle Pitts. Behind him, we have Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, and Waller, who are all ranked above him. I get it; those guys are proven studs, but it's for me, it's just fun to think about the prospect of a tight end like this that could be a reliable pass catcher in this offense. And like Ryan Tannehill isn't a terrible quarterback. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's bad. He's mediocre, but for what he could do in this offense, I think he has the skill set as a quarterback to feed Chig the ball and have him be a reliable person week in, week out, especially at a position where anyone outside of Kelsey and Andrews is a dart throw anyway. So you're basically just playing for third through whatever. So currently being drafted as the tight end 11, I'm willing to take that shot. He doesn't cost a lot. He's a late draft pick with the potential of getting a bunch of targets in this offense. So I love me some Chig this year.
Oh, we know. I I kind of agree with you, and I kind of disagree with you. I was very high on Chig. Well, not very. I mean, I wouldn't say very high. I liked Chig before they signed Hopkins. I think with the Hopkins signing, granted, I think that helps Burks because it helps his style of play. I don't know if it helps Chig because I could see Hopkins getting a lot of those red zone targets that you would have gone to Chig, those like jump balls that we've known Hopkins to be phenomenal at in the red zone. I could see him getting those now. Um, so that's my only concern with that. But otherwise, for a late round breakout tight end, I definitely agree that Chig has the potential to do it with the best of them. So
I disagree. I'm on the opposite end of you. I don't really care for Chig. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't see the hype. Tannehill is fine as far as, I guess, a quarterback goes if you want to have a backup. Chig really only had 3 touchdowns last year. Other than that, like you just said, it's a dart throw at tight end. So I think that's really the thing to take away from this whole part here is that you are taking a bit of a dart throw. I understand the percentage as far as target shares and all. That's great. I don't know. There's two touchdowns within the 16 weeks of fantasy football. There's one extra touchdown in week 18 when nothing matters. So it's an up and down for me. I'm not exactly excited if I have Chick on my team if he's my tight end one, as I am really any other tight end. So uh, yeah. Plus, I don't really know if Tannehill's going to be the starter for the whole season, and not to mention DeAndre is going to demand his targets. So
See, I
that's
don't
all I got to
think
say.
any quarterback on that team outside of Ryan Tannehill can start all season. So, it, I mean, the news coming out of Tennessee right now is Malik Willis is playing ahead of Will Levis. That's no good. That's not very fun to think about. So he's gonna play. I don't see him coming off the field unless he's injured or something. Their season just goes down the toilet and they want to just see what the rookies have. But um, I'm just taking the bet on, even if I go Chig in drafts this year, I'm most likely going to draft a second tight end just because I could be wrong. But I'd rather
No
take the
need to.
shot than not and just be stuck with. I mean, if he doesn't work out, he costs you a late pick. You go play the stream game with tight ends. You just pick whoever's on waivers and cycle through until you maybe find one that sticks. But outside of that, I mean, you're doing that same thing anyway. Like, let's say you get Waller and Waller comes out and he's not as good as people think he is. You're going to
Waller's
do the
going to be
same
great
thing.
this year.
I mean, I hope so, being a Giants fan, but it's
I
just
know so.
with tight ends, it's really hard because you can love this one of these guys,
I
and you
would
could be just completely
1000% want
wrong.
to have Waller than Chick. Get out of here.
I would too, but I'm just out of these guys. Waller, he's an aging
Waller does
tight
better than
end.
TJ Hawkinson at the end of the year. That's it.
Okay, maybe
Well,
we'll have to
tight
clip
end
that.
three on the season.
We'll have
Tight
to
end
clip
three on the
that and
season.
see. So I
All
don't know
right.
if Hawkins
Tight
can
end
finish.
3, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. But
If not two.
okay, all right. That I think is a little too bold for this. You're getting a little too hot and
Like,
bothered
it's going to
here.
go Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, if Kelsey decides to retire after like week 2, maybe
We'll see.
we'll
We'll
see.
see. We'll see. We'll see.
But yeah, so those are our breakouts for 2023. I think it was a lot of fun. We agreed, but there were some sticking points that we had to get a little bit of rebuttal going on. But I'm excited for this season. And he brings it up again. Oh man, you're never gonna live that down now. Christian Watson's gonna be
I
your guy this season, huh?
I
Tim
hope there's a
Patrick
week where
apparently is
Christian
mine.
Watson
So
just goes nuts and it's the week against you, so I get to hear you cry all day.
it's,
I
it's
hope I
gonna
do get to play against him because he's going to drop all the passes.
it's gonna be the week, and it's gonna knock him out of the Guillotine League again, and that's gonna be the end of that. Oh, that'd
Christian
be great.
Watson knocked me out last year because he dropped that pass.
Oh, he's
And
gonna
Aaron
get it
Rodgers
on the
got
other
me
end.
like 4 points.
You're gonna get it on this end
There
this
lies
time.
the saltiness. Now we're getting to the root of the
Oh,
problem.
yeah.
Oh, it's
I
fun.
told you I was a hater ever since that play.
All right, well, we're gonna start bouncing out of here, but do us a favor, like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment on the YouTube. Come check out our Twitter, check out our website. We got some fun things going on. Hopefully in the next week or two, we got a couple fun episodes to get everyone ready for the 2023 season. We'll do some drafts together because I know we're gonna have a lot of fun with that because we're all gonna be going crazy. But all right, that's it for us. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll see you on the next episode. So long, everyone.
Peace out.
Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the Heroes FF.